The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. $1.87, that was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one, at two at a time, by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher, until one cheek burned with a silent imitation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing left to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates a moral reflection that life is made up of soft soaps, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to second, take a look at the home, a furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it is certainly had that word on look out for the Medicassini squad. In the vestibule below, a letter box into which no letter would go, an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also, a pretending theatre no was a card bearing name, Mr. James Dhilagam Young. The Dhilagam had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity, when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letter of Dhilagam looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unshamingly deal. But whenever Mr. James Dhilagam Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dhilagam Young, already introduced you to as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with the powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey backyard. Tomorrow would be a Christmas day. She had only $1.87, with which to buy a Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for a month with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim, her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine and rare and sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the window of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and a very agile person, maybe by his observing his reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal stripes, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly, she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly, she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were 2 processions of Dame James Dhilagam Young's, in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della Hale, had been the Queen of Sheba, lived in flat across the air shaft. Della would have let her hair hang out of the window someday to dry to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor, with all his treasure piled up in the basement. Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed, just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself also a garment for her. And then she did up again nervously and quickly. When she fluttered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her gold brown jacket, on went her old brown hat, with a whirl of skirts, and with the brilliant sparkle till in her eyes she fluttered out of the door, and down the stairs to be the street, where she stopped. The sign read, Softening hair goods of all kinds. One flight up Della ran and collected herself. Painting Madame, large to white, chilly, hardly looked so freeing. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take it hat off, and let have a sight at look of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with her practiced hands. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, next 2 hours rippled by on rosy wings. Forget the harsh metaphor. She had been ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it last. It surely had been made for Jim, and no one else. There was no other like it any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was platinum fob chain and chased in a design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone, and not meretricious ornamentation. As good things should do, it was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim. It was like him. Quickness and the value. The description applied to both. $20 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With the chain of his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he was sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in the place of chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave a little prudence and reason. She got out of her curlings iron and lighted the gas and went to working repairing the ravage made by generosity added with love, which is always a tremendous task. Dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 45 minutes, her head was covered with a tiny, close-lying curls that made her look wonderful, like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully and critically. If Jim does not kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he will say I will look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he is always entered. Then she heard his step on the stair away down on the first flight. Little silent prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please God, make him think I am still pretty," she thought. The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stepped inside the door as immovable as a setter at the scan of a quill. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not feel, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with a peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have a lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It will grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hairs grow awfully fast. Say, Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I have got for you." "You have cut off your hair?" asked Jim laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact yet even the hardest mental labor. "Cut it off and sold it off," said Della. "Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I am me without my hair, aren't I?" Jim looked about the room curiously. "You say your hair is gone," he said, with an air almost of idiocy. You need not look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. Sold and gone too. It's a Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered." She went on with a sudden sweetness. "But nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put them the chops on, Jim?" Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his Della. "For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or millions a year. What is the difference?" A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. "Don't make any mistake, Dell," he said, "about me. I don't think there is anything in the way of a haircut or shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you will unwrap the package, you may see why you had me going away at first." White fingers enabled tore at the string at paper, and then the ecstatic scream of joy, then alas, a quick feminine change to a historical tears, wails necessitating the immediate employment of the comforting powers of the lord of the flat. For there lay the combs, the set of the combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped for a long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, blue tortoiseshell with their jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in a beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but trees that should not have adorned the covered adornments were gone. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at the end she was able to look up with the dim eyes and a smile say, My hairs grow so fast, Jim. And then Della leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh." Jim had not seen this beautiful present. She held it out of him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her pride and ardent spirit. It is a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You will have to look at the time, 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it is look on it. Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas present away and keep a while. They are too nice to just at present. I sold the watch to money to buy your gowns. And now suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas present. Being wise, their gifts were no of duplication, and here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasure of their house. But in the last word to the wise these days, let it said that of all who give gifts, these were to the wisest of all who give and receive gifts. Such as they are wisest, everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi.